There is a moment every archer knows. The string is drawn, the shaft is steady, the target is clear, and between the last breath in and the first breath out, there is a silence so absolute that the whole world disappears. That silence is tonight. Before this night is over, two things will happen that have not aligned like this in over a decade. The moon will reach her last quarter at 20 degrees of Sagittarius, the archer, at 5:39 tomorrow morning Eastern Time. And just hours before that, Jupiter, the ruler of Sagittarius, stationed direct at 15 degrees of Cancer after 4 months of moving backward through the sky. The planet of abundance woke up at the exact degree where ancient astrologers placed its highest exaltation. And it woke up on the same night its own sign holds a moon that is asking you to release. One force says aim, the other says let go. And if that contradiction sounds impossible, stay with me, because that paradox is the entire point. Your body already sensed this before your mind had a name for it. A tightness in the hips and lower back that appeared out of nowhere this past week. Thoughts that race the moment your head touches the pillow. Plans and half-finished decisions circling like they are looking for a place to land. A sudden wave of memory. A smell. A room you have not stood inside for years, arriving with an emotion so sharp it startled you, and a growing impatience with someone close. A conversation that needs to happen, but the words keep dissolving before you can hold them. All of it is the bowstring tightening. Tonight I'm going to walk you through what is unfolding in the sky, why your ruling planet chose this precise degree to change direction, and the 3 signs standing at the center of the target. And then I will give you a practice, something physical, something you can carry into the 9 days between now and the spring equinox, because this arrow does not fly once, it flies in stages. Let me start with what is actually happening above you right now, because the precision of this moment deserves your full attention. Jupiter has been retrograde since November 11th of last year. For 4 months, the largest planet in our solar system appeared to slide backward through Cancer, the sign of home, memory, and emotional truth. During that time, Jupiter traveled from 25 degrees all the way back to 15. And tonight, at 11:30 p.m. Eastern, it stopped. Not gradually, not gently. A planet that normally covers several arc minutes per day slowed to absolute zero, then reversed its direction. That still point, that breathless pause, landed at exactly 15 degrees and 5 minutes of Cancer. If that number means nothing to you yet, it will in a moment. 15 degrees of Cancer is what classical astrologers call Jupiter's degree of exaltation. It is the single point in the entire zodiac where Jupiter is considered to operate at its highest possible dignity. Not its home, not its comfort zone, its throne. The medieval Arabic astronomers who mapped the planetary dignities with extraordinary care, scholars working in the tradition of figures like al-Biruni in the 11th century, recorded this degree as the place where Jupiter's capacity for wisdom, generosity, and expansive vision reaches its absolute peak. Jupiter does not return to Cancer for another 12 years. It will not station direct at this exact degree again in your lifetime. That is what just happened in the sky above you. Now layer this. While Jupiter stands motionless at its point of greatest power, the moon slides into Sagittarius, Jupiter's own sign, and reaches her last quarter phase. The sun, at 20 degrees of Pisces, throws a square to the moon at 20 degrees of Sagittarius. A square is not a gentle handshake, it is a confrontation. It is 2 forces pulling in directions that refuse to merge. The sun in Pisces says, dissolve, surrender, let the boundaries blur. The moon in the Archer says, no, aim, choose, commit to a direction, and fire. And here is the paradox that sits at the center of tonight. Jupiter, waking up, says it is time to move forward. The last quarter moon says it is time to release what no longer belongs. These are not contradictions. They are 2 halves of the same motion. Because no archer has ever fired an arrow without first letting go of the string. There is a story older than any Western zodiac that carries this exact teaching. In the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata, the greatest archer who ever lived was a warrior named Arjuna. His bow was called Gandiva, and with it he had never missed a target, never hesitated, never faltered. But on the morning of the most important battle of his life, standing in his chariot between 2 vast armies, Arjuna did something no one expected. He lowered Gandiva. He let the bow slip from his fingers. His limbs trembled, his mouth went dry, and he turned to his charioteer, who happened to be the god Krishna in disguise, and said, "I cannot fight." That pause, that refusal, that moment of absolute stillness when the greatest archer in the world set down his weapon, became the doorway to one of the most profound spiritual teachings ever recorded, the Bhagavad Gita. 700 verses born from a warrior who stopped, not because he was weak, because he needed to understand why he was aiming before he could release the arrow with integrity. In Sanskrit, the word for Sagittarius is Dhanu. It means bow. The constellation itself is the weapon. And this is what tonight is asking of you. Not to fire blindly, not to hold the string forever, but to stand in that trembling space between drawing back and releasing, and to know what you are aiming at. Jupiter retrograde was your Arjuna moment. 4 months where the universe pulled the string back, tightened the tension, forced you into stillness. Plans stalled. Doors that should have opened stayed sealed. The motions you thought you had processed resurfaced with new weight. That was not punishment. That was the draw. Energy was being stored. And now the planet stands at its most powerful position in the sky, vibrating at zero velocity, like a bowstring drawn to its maximum tension, holding more potential energy than at any other point in its 12-year cycle. But here is what most readings will leave out. Jupiter's return to forward motion does not mean the arrow flies today. A planet at station barely moves. It will take weeks to build speed. By April 4th, Jupiter will still be crawling through the same degree region. The arrow is on the string. The aim is set. The release has begun. But the flight, the real acceleration, unfolds gradually through spring and into summer, when Jupiter finally enters Leo at the end of June. This is why the last quarter moon matters so much right now. Because the moon is doing the work that Jupiter cannot do alone. Jupiter says, "Here is your aim." The moon says, "But what are you still carrying that will drag the arrow off course?" The last quarter is a stripping phase. It peels away. It asks you to set down every target that is not truly yours, every ambition you inherited, every goal you are chasing because you once promised someone you would, every version of success that belongs to a younger self who no longer lives inside you. Now bring this closer. Mercury is retrograde in Pisces at roughly 14 degrees, moving backward through the waters of intuition and dissolving clarity. Mars sits at 5 degrees of Pisces, adding a restless urgency to everything you feel but cannot yet name. Saturn and Neptune have both recently entered Aries, beginning an entirely new cycle that has not occurred in this combination for generations. The sky is not quiet. It is loaded. Every planet is either stationing, retrograding, or stepping into unfamiliar territory. And right in the middle of this cosmic reshuffling, Jupiter, the great benefic, the lord of expansion and meaning, stands perfectly still at its throne degree, asking one simple question. Where are you aiming now? The title of this video names 3 signs, and those 3 signs are standing closer to the center of this target than anyone else in the zodiac right now. Cancer, Sagittarius, Pisces. If you carry significant placements in any of these signs, your sun, your moon, your rising sign, what follows is not background noise, it is a direct transmission. Cancer. Jupiter is stationing direct in your first house of identity. For 4 months, expansion turned inward. You reconsidered who you are at the most fundamental level. Decisions about home, family, and emotional safety were suspended in amber, visible but untouchable. Now the amber cracks. What emerges is not a new you. It is the you that was forming in silence, the one who finally knows what to ask for without apology. Sagittarius. The last quarter moon falls in your first house while your ruler stations direct in your 8th house of shared resources, intimacy, and transformation. The moon is stripping an old identity, something you have been performing but no longer believe. You may feel it as a strange grief for a version of yourself that still gets applause, but no longer gets your respect. Meanwhile, Jupiter is unlocking a financial or emotional exchange that was frozen since November. The archer is being asked to release the version of the quest that was someone else's map and to aim with your own coordinates. Pisces. With Mercury retrograde and Mars both moving through your first house, while Jupiter activates your fifth house of creativity, joy, and self-expression, this is a corridor of rediscovery. You have been swimming in fog for weeks. Conversations misfire. Plans dissolve before they solidify. But the thoughts are not confused. They are composting. What is decomposing in your mind right now will become the raw material for something you create in the months ahead. Jupiter's direct motion is the signal that the soil is ready. Trust the fog. It is not hiding the path. It is softening the ground beneath it. But the arrow has not landed yet, and what happens between now and the equinox on March 20th will determine the trajectory of the next 3 months. What I am about to lay out for you is the sequence, not a single event, a sequence. Because the sky between tonight and March 20th is not a pause between two chapters. It is the flight path of the arrow itself, and every stage of that path carries a distinct instruction. Tonight through tomorrow, Jupiter stations direct, and the last quarter moon in Sagittarius strips away the targets that are no longer yours. This is stage 1, the release of the string. From March 13th through the 15th, Mercury retrograde in Pisces forms an exact conjunction with Mars. When the planet of the mind collides with the planet of action, while both are submerged in the most intuitive sign in the zodiac, words that have been circling for weeks finally find a body. This is where the conversation you have been avoiding becomes unavoidable. Not because someone forces it, because the pressure of holding it inside exceeds the discomfort of letting it out. The shaft is in the air. Then, March 18th and 19th, a new moon in Pisces at 28 degrees, the first lunation since the eclipse that shook the beginning of this month. New moons are seeds. This one falls at the very end of Pisces, the very end of the zodiac, the last degree before the entire wheel resets at 0 Aries. It is a seed planted in the final breath of winter. And the next morning, March 20th, Mercury stations direct and the sun crosses into Aries. The spring equinox. The arrow strikes. 9 days, 3 stages: release, flight, impact. And you are standing at the first one right now. Now I need to take you somewhere uncomfortable, because this is where the real work lives. The last quarter moon in the sign of the Archer does not simply ask what you want to let go of. It asks something sharper. It asks what you have been pretending to aim at. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from chasing a target that was never yours to begin with. It does not feel like failure. It feels like a low-grade numbness, a heaviness in the mornings that has nothing to do with sleep. You get things done, you move through your list, but somewhere beneath the competence there is a voice that whispers, "This is not it." And every time that voice rises, you push it back down with another task, another commitment, another reason to stay on the trajectory you chose years ago when you were a different person, standing in a different room with different information. Jupiter retrograde spent 4 months dragging that voice to the surface. Cancer holds our oldest contracts, the agreements we made with our families before we had the language to negotiate. I will be the responsible one. I will not need too much. I will keep the peace even if it costs me my truth. These are not thoughts. They are architecture. They are load-bearing walls built so early that most of us forgot they were constructed at all. We mistake them for who we are. And now Jupiter stands direct, at the degree of its highest authority, inside the sign that holds those walls, and it says, the renovation begins. Not by tearing everything down, but by walking through each room with honest eyes, and asking which walls are structural, and which walls are prisons dressed as safety. Feel this in your body for a moment. That tightness I named earlier, the one sitting in your hips and lower back. In the body, the hip joint is where we store the tension between moving forward and holding still. It is the hinge. When you are ready to move but something unnamed keeps you planted, the hips lock. The lower back absorbs the weight of what you are carrying but refusing to set down. Your body has been keeping score. It knows what your calendar has not yet admitted. And that impatience with someone close to you, that is not irritability. That is the edge of honesty, pressing against the inside of a relationship that has been operating on an outdated agreement. Something needs to be renegotiated, not destroyed, renegotiated. The last quarter moon does not blow things apart. It reveals where the seams have thinned. What you do with that revelation in the 9 days ahead is your release. So here is the practice. I promised you something physical, and I mean it. This is not a visualization. This is not a wish. This is something your hands will do. Between tonight and March 20th, you are going to move through 3 deliberate acts, one for each stage of the arrow's flight. Stage 1. Tonight or tomorrow. Find a piece of paper, not a journal, a single loose page, something you could fold, something you could tear, something that does not belong to a bound collection. Sit somewhere quiet. At the top, write today's date, March 11th, 2026. Below it, write this sentence and finish it in your own words. The target I am releasing is. Do not think too long. The first thing that surfaces is the true one. The mind will try to edit it into something acceptable. Let the raw version stand. When you are done, fold the paper once. Place it somewhere you will see it every morning. A mirror, a windowsill, the edge of a shelf. Do not open it. Let it sit in daylight like an arrow that has left the string but has not yet reached the wall. Stage 2. On March 15th, the day Mercury meets Mars, take that folded paper and hold it. Do not open it. Sit with it in your hands for 3 full breaths. Then say out loud to no one but yourself and whatever you believe is listening, the conversation you have been avoiding. Not the rehearsed version, not the diplomatic version, the version that lives underneath the version you have been preparing. You do not need to say it to the person yet. You need to hear your own voice carrying the weight of it, because some truths only become real when they vibrate through the chest and leave the mouth. This is the arrow in flight. It is about you no longer holding it inside the bow. Stage 3. On March 20th, the morning of the equinox, open the paper. Read what you wrote 9 days ago. Notice how the words land differently after you have carried them in the light and spoken the unspeakable out loud. Now turn the paper over. On the back, write one sentence. Not a goal, not a resolution. A declaration of where you are aiming next. One sentence that the version of you who just walked through this 9-day corridor is ready to claim. Then take the paper outside. If you have earth beneath your feet, press it into the soil. If you live in a place where the ground is still frozen or paved, place it at the base of any living thing, a tree, a plant, a pot of herbs on your kitchen sill. The arrow meets the ground, the cycle completes. This practice is built on the actual architecture of the sky. The dates are not symbolic. They correspond to real transits, real planetary contacts, real shifts in the energetic field that astrologers have tracked for millennia. You are not performing a metaphor. You are moving in rhythm with the largest clock you will ever stand inside. And there is one more thing about the arrow that tends to be overlooked. When an ancient Bowyer forged an arrowhead, the final step was not sharpening. It was tempering. The metal was heated until it glowed, then plunged into cold water. The shock of that contact, fire meeting ice, is what gave the blade its lasting hardness. Without the tempering, the edge would dull on first impact. The 4 months of retrograde were your fire. The station direct, this night, this moment, is the cold water. What emerges from this contact is not fragile. It is tempered. It holds its edge. But there is still one question left, and it may be the most important one, because everything I have given you tonight, the astronomy, the mythology, the practice, the sequence, all of it converges on a single point that only you can answer. Where is your arrow aimed? Not where it was aimed last year, not where someone told you it should point, not the safe target, the sensible target, the one that would make everyone comfortable. Where is it aimed right now, tonight, with everything you have felt and carried and questioned over these 4 months still alive inside your chest? Because here is what I know about arrows. They do not care about perfection. They do not wait until conditions are ideal. They fly crooked sometimes. They catch wind. But they only reach anything at all if the hand opens, if the string is released, if the archer trusts the draw enough to let go. You are not behind. You are not late. You are standing at the exact point in your life where the bowstring holds its deepest tension. And the only thing between you and the trajectory you came here to travel is the willingness to stop gripping what was never meant to stay in your hand. The arrow that flies truest is the one released without apology. Something drew your hand to this bow tonight. Something in you recognized the tension before I named it. and you are no longer the person who pressed play. So I will ask you directly, what is the target you are finally ready to name? Write it below. Not the polished version, the one that makes your pulse quicken. Your aim, declared in that comment section, becomes the first arrow loosed from your own bow tonight. And somewhere below your words, another archer is waiting to see that someone else dared to name theirs. Every one of these videos begins days before you hear it. Hours spent listening to the sky so that what reaches you lands where it needs to. If this one struck close, a single tap below extends its reach to the next archer, whose string is drawn and waiting. Subscribe and turn the bell on, because the sky between now and summer is drawing back for something that builds on everything you felt tonight. The universe has spoken. What comes next is in your hands.